I feel that as a black man, I have been prevented from having the kind of life that I feel I should have had in America. I'm not a criminal, I'm not a bank robber, I'm not a rapist, I'm not a lot of things negative. And I don't feel that I should be profiled as such.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of Black Nouveau. I'm Joanne Williams. You may know James Causey as an editorial writer for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. He's one of a group of 5 writers we'll profile this week. As we move into spring, we'll remember tennis legend Shanda Rubin's visit to Milwaukee, and we'll review the poster art of Amos Kennedy. We begin, though, with special education. Those are the strategies and programs created to help educators reach and teach students with special needs. African Americans make up a disproportionate number of students in this category. Special Education Practices is a survey of African American scholars on how to best serve students with special needs. Dr. Ramel Smith is one of the editors of the book, and Dr. Darrell Williams is one of a number of Milwaukee contributors to the book. Here's the book, and I want to read you this part of it because I think it sets up what the book is about and what you should know about special ed. This book is dedicated to scholars, educators, and related professionals who have devoted their lives to fighting against misidentification, misassessment, miscategorization, misplacement, and misinstruction of African American children and youth because they look, talk, learn, and behave differently. Is that what special education addresses, Ramel?
Well, we hope not, but sometimes it does. Sometimes we see that they think something that's a difference is a deficit. And one of the things we want to do in this book is to show that something's not a deficit just because it's a difference.
What's a difference? When you meet a kid and you're trying to assess whether or not he or she has a special need, what is a difference?
Well, there's a process where students have to go through where they have to be referred, and there's a team that looks at that whole process. But a lot of times our students, especially our African American male students, their behavior is a little bit more aggressive than our normal Caucasian student. And because of that, a lot of times they're being referred to special education programs, mainly EBD classrooms, just because they are different. And that's what we're talking about. Different doesn't always mean a disability.
If their behavior is quote unquote different, does that mean that they need some sort of special education, or do they need some sort of behavior modification?
Well, what we want to do is to create a classroom that's conducive for all students. Everybody learns differently, and most of the times when we look inside of our classrooms, we're going to see a disproportionate number of white female teachers to our black African Americans. So you're talking about a disconnect from gender, from race, from socioeconomic status usually, and these differences is usually what makes people think something is wrong. So what we want to do is to try to create an environment that's conducive for all learners, to not say that this person necessarily has special needs, but they may learn differently. How can we create a classroom to maximize their potential?
But how can we do that when everybody has to get an equal education?
And this is very important, and this is what I think Linda Darling Hammond talks about when she talks about culturally relevant teaching practices. And this starts this has to start before the teachers enter the classroom, but this is where everybody has really a collaborative role to play in preparing our teachers to be able to better prepare our students to navigate the issues within the world and to better prepare them. So using those culturally relevant teaching practices and being able to connect and build relationships with students will help them inside of the classroom and help our students.
You say culturally relevant. Does that mean we need more black teachers?
We need more African American teachers, but also we need teachers who are quality teachers, teachers who can really connect with students. And I've been in the system long enough to realize that not only African American teachers are relevant, but all teachers, Asians and Caucasian teachers. The defining factor is the ability to connect and build relationships with those students, because students, they care about who cares about them. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
And any
that
teacher,
crosses
any
student
teacher
lines.
can do that, right?
Yes, and when we talk about teaching, it's not even just with the teachers. What we have to do, what Festus Obiako, one of the editors of the book, created something called a comprehensive support model. And basically what we have is 5 entities. We have the government, the community, the school, the home, and the self for the person, because it has to be accountability for the student. And when we get all 5 of those factors working together in harmony and unison, you see magic happen. So we don't get into the blame game. It's the teacher's fault. It's the home fault. We recognize it's a collective effort from everybody involved.
Well, I thought there were only 3 legs on that stool. The teacher, the student, and the parent. Where'd these other 2 come from?
Well, a responsible government cannot divorce itself from the citizenry. And when you talk about the community has always been that safety net when one of those other legs have been broken or been hurt and needed a cast. So if we're going to have a solution to this, it's a systemic problem. So it's going to take all of these systems together to work in unison to come together.
Now, I've looked at your sections in here, and Daryl, your section is called Getting In and Staying In, a look at the black hole of special education.
Yes.
Is it a black hole?
It's a black hole, because a lot of times when students enter into special education, we always look inside, but they have a hard time getting out of special education. Unless you have a group of individuals inside that school who's really advocating for that student to not only provide them with the services that they needed to get in, but also once they receive those services, getting those students back into the mainstream where the regular education students are, so they can be better to able to compete.
But let me play devil's advocate here. Shouldn't all education for every child be special?
Exactly.
Shouldn't every child have an IEP so that they have their own learning track and they are expected to learn as they can, because everybody learns differently?
Well, this is a good thing, because whenever you talk about an IEP, individualized education plan, we think about special education. But sometimes in the classrooms, you can teach to the most homogeneous group, and you'll probably have 60, 70% that you can present a lesson plan to, and they will get it. But you're going to have that upper 15 that's a little more advanced, and that other 15 that's a little lower advanced, where you have to have something specially designed for them. And as you talked about mainstreaming, we want to put our kids in the least restrictive environments, but in those least restrictive environments, we want to make sure that they're still held to the highest of expectations. So some classes can be regular, and then sometimes you can be mainstreamed out for those special needs that you may have.
You know, if I could.
Go ahead. You got 30 seconds. Go ahead, Daryl.
Within our school, there's a group that's called, we had our 9th graders go through a process called with My Life, My Plan. So that was a great initiative where students said, well, I want to be a lawyer. And this is regular ed and special ed students alike. So the requirements to become a lawyer is not going to be any different because you special ed and because I'm regular ed. So those students who might need that extra help in those special needs classrooms, then our job, our role as educators is to provide them with that extra support and then move those students along so they can reach their goals.
The book is called Special Education Practices. It's designed for educators and administrators and people who want to be teachers, but I would recommend that parents read it so that they can advocate for their kids. Thank you both very much for coming and talking about it today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As they say, reading is fundamental, and if you are not sure where to start, we have some Milwaukee authors to get you started. Marian Afore is a person who likes documenting everything. So much, a relative told her to put it in a book.
I used to send out text messages to friends and families, and one day my cousin said, can you stop sending me text messages? Just put it all in a book. It's too good to waste. And then a friend of mine made a t-shirt, and people wanted the t-shirt, and I started putting together the words for books. I have 3 books that I've written. The first book is called Not My Reality, Encouragement While Dancing in the Storms. It's a compilation of quotations and affirmations that I used to send out. It's all about affirming you. Getting to that place where you can say, you know, you told me I'm too fat, you told me I'm too tall, you told me I didn't know enough, you told me I was only a wife. That's not my reality. Your perceptions are not my reality. I don't have to give you anything or be anything I don't choose to be because I have everything inside of me that I need. Then I have something called Someone Touched Me, which is chronicles abuse, sexual, domestic abuse, all type of things like that. And I just tell little short stories that emphasize examples of abuse. And the last book is called Seeking Escape. And that book is about taking my personal stories and changing our way of thinking about fear, our way of thinking about change, divorce, exploring your own personal securities, insecurities, and knowing that you can truly escape. And escape simply means exploring, seizing, communicating, affirming, and accepting every possibility to excel, because your survival is the only option you have.
LaRue Ned said writing why we shouldn't call our ancestors slaves a learning process.
It started out as an article in the newspaper. I was writing an article about slavery, and so I went to the dictionary to look up the definition. And then it dawned on me, hey, that this definition does not fit black people. The definition of the word slave.
So I hope that these new veterans.
Hattie Keith is in the rewriting stage of her soon-to-be published book, Miss Hattie Through It All.
Veterans, that we need to treat our veterans much better than we did back then. It's a memoir, Miss Hattie Through It All. Went back looking for a lost love. Someone I fell in love as a teenager, and sometime during the Vietnam War we separated and got lost from each other. He had wrote me a letter and asked me to marry him, and I wrote back and said yes, and I never heard anything else. It was 40 years before I found out what happened, and that's what's in between the pages of this book.
Sherman Jackson, pen name Tabbas Cossey, copyrighted his first book, Tab's Philosophies, in 1999 and has since published 2 books.
The first book is Tabos, This Average Black Brother's Observations. Even though America is a great nation, I feel that as a black man, I have been prevented from having the kind of life that I feel I should have had in America. I'm not a criminal, I'm not a bank robber, I'm not a rapist, I'm not a lot of things negative. And I don't feel that I should be profiled as such.
James E. Causey, editorial writer and columnist with the journal Sentinel, started writing as a youth and cemented it after a contest.
I won this essay writing contest on Martin Luther King Jr. when I was in junior high school. And my article was published in the Milwaukee Community Journal, the largest African-American newspaper in the state. And when that was published, I got something like a $50 stipend and all this recognition. I was like, man, I got paid for this? And I just fell in love with writing after that. You know, I used to do a lot of book reviews. I mainly interviewed Omar Tariq and Michael Baston and people like that. And they will always tell me, if you have a book in you, let it come out. And I was thinking, okay, let me try it. And so I tried it, and the first book that I wrote was called The Twist. It's an urban fiction tale about a sports writer whose father left him, and now he's left to depend on other men to take up that slack for when his father left. So he makes a lot of bad decisions, and it talks about how those bad decisions cost him in the long run. I have the sequel to that called Twisted. It's a book on Gerald McCullen, the former WBC middleweight champion of the world. He's a good friend of mine. He was injured in a bout in London against Nigel Benn, where he suffered brain damage. I wrote a couple of stories on him for the newspaper, but I want to tell his story on what a fallen warrior, what they have to deal with when the spotlight isn't on them anymore and they need people to take care of them. Should be a touching tale.
We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved like a tree.
Social justice is just, I think it is a part of my makeup. You know, I grew up in the 60s when there was a completely different environment in America, where social justice, where the need for justice really did exist. And so I think that's embedded in me. And my parents embedded the idea that all people are equal and that you must help when you can.
Amos Kennedy Jr. is a printing press artist with an international reputation. His posters speak to social, political, and racial issues.
Some of my best pieces, I really like things that I've done related to the civil rights movement. I did a whole series summer before last to accompany work from Alabama that was on exhibition in Italy. And they had a series of photographs that were taken during the Selma to Montgomery March, especially the Bloody Sunday. And I did a series of that, and that's where the maps came from, that project. There is still a need for justice, but I think that in the American society there has been a lack of attention to justice, and commercialism has trumped the social nature. I tell people that we have become a nation of consumers, not citizens.
Kennedy gave up the comforts of the corporate world to pursue his craft.
What I do is letterpress printing, and until the late 60s, letterpress printing was commercially viable. And so there were many shops, say in Milwaukee, that did letterpress printing. But by the late 60s, offset printing became the commercial way of printing, so letterpress fell out of favor, and the equipment became available to artists. For a number of years, I had practiced calligraphy. But the problem I had with calligraphy is I would do a very long piece, and when I get to the last line, I would misspell a word. So I'd have to start all over again. And then in the late 80s, I took my two sons to Williamsburg, and there I saw letterpress printing in a shop. And I wanted to do it, and we got back to Chicago, and I found a place that would teach it, a place very much like Redline, a community print center. And I took a course. And I tell people it's like falling in a hole. Gravity takes care of you after you take the first step.
His work stirs emotions and encourages viewers to think in different ways.
My favorite pieces are the ones that sell. So the one that you buy today will be my most favorite piece today. But I enjoy doing them. One of the things that I enjoy most is when I print, I do it with such randomness that no two posters are the same, the backgrounds on them. So what I really enjoy is looking at all the posters at once as they scattered across the shop, because there's a similarity but difference, and that is what makes the world. We are all the same because we're all different.
Although he enjoys an international reputation, he often refers to himself as a humble Negro from the South.
Actually, I'm not a Negro. My birth certificate says I'm colored. Both my parents were colored. I was born in Louisiana. And on my birth certificate it says father, race colored, mother, race colored. So that makes me officially in the state of Louisiana colored. And I tell people I was born colored, I was raised Negro, I was educated black. So I have this thing going on. But don't call me an African American, because I don't like that term. I prefer the term Negro because there's a strength in the term Negro. And the term African American, again, I think when you think of Negroes, you think of the civil rights movement, you think of the struggle. And you think of a sense of community, because we were all oppressed and we had to get this oppression off of our back. Even if you were a doctor in the South, you had certain things that you couldn't do. You were treated, a doctor with a PhD, as Malcolm X said, is just a nigger with a PhD. And so we had to, we had this unifying factor that I think has been lost after the surface struggle ended. There's still a struggle, but we don't recognize it because it's not blatantly in your face, such as there's the black water cooler, here's the white water cooler. It's more subtle, and we've kind of lost it.
His posters are not expensive because he wants to make them accessible to the public.
Art is a public thing. It is not the exclusive domain of the wealthy. That we all make art, we all are creative, and that you should express your creativity at all times. You are as much an artist as I am. Just make stuff and have fun enjoying doing it.
Before you heard of Venus, before you saw Serena, there was another young African-American woman playing professional tennis who'd been wowing the crowds around the world since she was 16 years old.
I was number 6 in the world, Australian Open doubles winner and semifinal, Grand Slam semifinalist. So a few things I've done, tennis-wise that I'm proud of.
And the Williams sisters were looking up to her.
When they first came out on the tour, they sort of, had been watching me and made sure to come up to me and tell me that. And along the way, we've just had, a relationship that's kind of evolved. But at the same time, you're still competitors. And, so there's a balance there. And, I mean, they're great. I mean, great athletes, great competitors, but just ambassadors, excellent ambassadors for the sport. So I'd say when you see that, it's real.
I first saw Shanda Rubin behind the courts after she played a match at the U.S. Open in New York in 1995. She didn't remember our encounter, of course, but she was just as gracious and friendly to me then as she was in Milwaukee with the kids this summer.
Did tennis change your life?
Completely.
I go through some hard people but I try to do the best I can do. At the end of the day, I say, what could I have done better?
And the thing is, the best opportunities are when we play people who are better than we are, or when we have to compete, or when we have to find a way around a challenge against someone who's better. And it's good then, because you have to do something more than what you've done, and that's how you improve.
If there's one thing Shanda Rubin has, it's a constantly positive attitude about tennis and life's challenges. She's coped with injuries that kept her out of her sport, and even dealt with her house burning to the ground last year in Louisiana. Adapting and coping. That was part of the message she brought to the dozens of kids gathered at Merrill Park in Milwaukee for a tennis clinic.
Don't compare yourself to other people. Okay, that's number one. With tennis and what I've done with the game, I had to learn how to follow my own path and do my own thing, because everybody wasn't playing tennis. Everybody wasn't going to tournaments. Sometimes I had to learn how to make a choice and do something on my own, not maybe go and do everything my friends were doing or go and do what the crowd is doing. So that's very important.
Born in Lafayette, Louisiana, Rubin was on a tennis court shortly after she learned to walk. How did you get started in tennis? Who put you on the court the first time?
My parents. My parents got me started with the game. They loved the sport. They started when they finished school and started playing into local tournaments and just more and more involved on the weekends, and I would just follow them out onto the court.
I'm sure a lot of our viewers want to know, what do you know about the big stars of tennis? They want to know, what's Venus like? What's Serena like? What's Maria Sharapova like? What are those people like?
Well, they're all quite different. I mean, you see them on the court, and you see a bit of their personalities that come out. With Venus and Serena, I actually played doubles with Venus at the Olympics, which was a great experience. In Greece, I played against them in doubles. I played against them in singles. And I've interacted with them as well.
Rubin retired from the professional tour in 2006. In those 16 years she played, she won almost $5 million. Now she's one of the elite athletes on the board of the United States Tennis Association. That's the governing body for all professional and amateur players. She's also very interested in helping kids learn tennis and the life lessons the sport can teach. That's why she visited Wisconsin for the Milwaukee Tennis and Education Foundation rally. Any kid could come out, pick up a racket, and try the sport.
These are still a little bit big, but let's try this one.
I don't know about that.
It's a little big still. Let's see. Oh yeah, you want to switch with her? Okay, yeah. That's a better one for you. Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, come on. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. You got it. Okay, you got it. Oh, awesome. Awesome. Oh, we got it.
Oh, yeah.
How did you get that over?
There we go.
Oh, man. That was pretty good, though. Good job. Partner. Good job. That's awesome.
Rubin is also trying a new career in television announcing while going back to school. She's taking Harvard University extension courses in business and economics. So how are you making the transition from the court to the classroom?
Well, you just do it. You just get out there and you get it done. You try different things. You try to continue to learn and grow, similar to the way I've always approached, my sport and anything that I wanted to be good at. You just embrace the challenge, and that's what I've tried to do in all of these other areas. It's been interesting. I will say that I've enjoyed every minute of it, but it has been a very different experience, and I've had fun kind of working different muscles of my brain, for lack of a better word. Everything you do is a process. You don't automatically start out at the top level. It sounds good to say you've done all of these great things, but you have to start where you are here today. You have to make it into the court. Oh, you can catch it and oh, nice. All right, I might want to play that game.
If you could do it again, would you do it again, or would you do something else?
I would do it again, absolutely, in a heartbeat. I've
Why?
loved it. I've loved, the game, the sport, playing it at the level that I've been able to play at. I feel very fortunate to play for the amount of time that I was able to play. I was on the tour for about 16 years. I feel lucky to have had those experiences, and not to mention the travel and learning about yourself and learning to be somewhat self-sufficient. I mean, it's priceless what I've gotten from the game. So I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Before we close tonight, we mentioned the recent passing of Milwaukee police officer Vincent A. Dawson. You may remember that Dawson was injured by a drunk driver. He was on his way to join a security force that was guarding President Jimmy Carter during the president's trip to Milwaukee in November 1980. As a result of the accident, Dawson lost his left leg, but now all police department motorcycles have leg guards on them. After leaving the police force in 1981, Dawson became an entrepreneur and started several businesses. He was 58 years old. We also note the passing of a pioneer in television journalism. Bob Teague, a graduate of Milwaukee's Lincoln High School, was the first African-American reporter at the Milwaukee Journal. He went on to break ground at the New York Times and WNBC Television News. Bob was also an All-American football player at the UW. He was an anchor, reporter, and producer in New York for more than 30 years. And that's our program for this week. For Black Nouveau, I'm Joanne Williams. Thanks for watching. Good night.